Hi guys. Okay, I put the hair up. You guys just saw me. I'm doing this the next day, so yeah, I don't wear this shirt every day. But I'm trying to get you at least 2 videos a week. We'll see how it works. Okay, so if you do not believe in ghosts, if you are not into listening to stories about this, then you want to go ahead and click off of this video because this is not the video for you. For those of you that believe in kind of afterlife and maybe people that are in between, whether they're going to heaven or hell or wherever they go, then you may find this to be a very interesting story time. It's open to interpretation on what people believe, and my husband hates when I share this story because he thinks I sound crazy. And I think unless you've actually had something that's happened to you in your own life, then you may not believe in what I'm about to share with you. So those that have experienced things will be more likely to be interested in these type of stories. So I got the hair up out of my face so I can tell this story. And it still gives me like goosebumps when I talk about it. So when I was younger, I was about 6 or 7 years old. We lived, and I don't remember exactly where in LA, if it was on Rosecrans or off of Rosecrans. So if you're from the LA area, then you may be familiar with Rosecrans. It's kind of a main street. And where we lived was in a duplex that was backed up to a railroad track. And actually, me and my brother would go and put pennies on the railroad track and then watch the train, which is so dangerous now. Don't do that. Don't do that. But what had happened was when we moved in, there was, and this is kind of open to interpretation to each person, but typically they say that when you do have a spirit or a ghost living with you, they usually are attached to some type of item. And so when we moved into this duplex, when we moved into the apartment, there was a television that was already in the duplex, which was kind of odd because it was a really nice one. And back in the day, that was when you had to like get up and click, 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 click and change the channel. But this one actually did have a remote, and it had like, 13 buttons. And so you'd click it and it would be like hard. You'd have to really like press on the buttons to get it to click, but it did have a clicker on it, which was pretty fancy back in the day. And it was in this really nice like wood encasing, and I can see it so clearly, which is really odd. Things will stick with you, but a lot of things you kind of forget about when you get older. But when we lived there, at first, little strange things would happen. For me and my brother, which at the time we were young, so me and my brother actually shared a bedroom. We didn't have a lot of money back then. My mom had just recently gotten remarried, and so we didn't have a lot of money back then. I'm not making excuses. We were poor. So we lived in this duplex, and me and my brother shared a room, and we had bunk beds. And this is some of the crazy stuff that I experienced, and then I'm going to tell you some stuff that my mother experienced too while living there. Now, my stepdad was very skeptical and didn't really necessarily believe until the end, which I will get into. So, while we lived there, what was really crazy is my brother had the bottom bunk, and then I had the top bunk. And there were times where I would be sleeping, and I would wake up in my closet. And at first, my mom and my family just kind of thought, oh, she's getting up out of bed, she's sleepwalking, and she's going to the closet to go sleep. So that was kind of the beginning of what was going on in the house. For some reason, it was kind of not being as nice to my brother as it was for me. And what it would do is we had a dresser that was on the side of our bed, and there was a couple of like nails that stood outside, like they hadn't quite finished the dresser all the way, so the nails kind of stuck out just a little bit. It wasn't the sharp end, but on the other end. And the ghost would actually slam my brother's arm against the dresser, and he would wake up and he'd have these cuts and scrapes across his arm because it would be slamming it. I actually witnessed where I woke up and the ghost was actually slamming his hand on the dresser, which was really creepy. But again, when you're young, you don't quite understand everything that's going on, so you kind of just think, oh, they're sleeping or you're sleepwalking. And he would also, the ghost would also, and I say he and I'll tell you why, would also move him into the closet. But when he would put him in the closet, he would make things fall so that my brother couldn't get out of the closet. And he was younger than me. He was 2 years younger. So, that puts him at 3 and 4. And he would wake up crying, and then I couldn't get the stuff away from the door. So my mom would have to come, or someone would have to come and push it. And I would get in trouble from my stepdad because he thought I was putting stuff in there to block him. Now, don't get me wrong, I was really mean to my brother, but this was not a time that I was actually doing anything. And obviously, he couldn't be sleepwalking and put himself into a closet where he's blocking himself in there. And I get so EBGB'd. The other thing that he would do is he would turn on the faucets and he'd leave them running and he'd flood areas. And he would turn on our gas stove, but without it turning on with the fire, so the gas would get into our house. So obviously he didn't want us there. There was something that was making him very angry. It was kind of crazy because I didn't really ever see anything like all I would more see is more like a fog type look where you could see something but you couldn't quite make it out. But there was a time where we had a door in our kitchen that had a little rectangle window cut out of it. And I remember I caught his reflection in the window and he looked kind of like a sailor. Now thinking back, maybe he was like a conductor for the railroads. It's possible that was something of what his job was. But I caught his reflection and I'd caught it 2 different times. And he looked so angry. Like he didn't look like, hey, he was more like, why are you here? And I don't know, maybe he was mad, maybe he lived there, maybe something bad had happened to him on how he died. And I feel like a lot of times that's why they kind of stay on Earth, is they have like unfinished business. And so he was really not happy with us. The other thing that would happen was that he would get on top of my mom. He wouldn't have sex with her, but he would put like pressure on her where she couldn't breathe, and he would like lay on top of her. Maybe he was trying to have sex with her. I don't know how that goes with ghosts, but he would be on top of her where she couldn't breathe, and she would try to call out to my stepdad to like come and get her, and she couldn't get any breath in. One of the times though, she was able to scream, and this is when my stepdad became a believer. Is he came into the room and he started yelling out, whoever the F you are, if you're a man or whatever he said. He started, talking smack to the ghost, and the ghost pushed him across the room and he fell into the wall and knocked him into the wall. And he was like ghostly pale, and we immediately, obviously moved after that point. This is the part that's really scary, is which while we lived there, my mom had this girl that would come over and she would babysit us, and she would bring her boyfriend over and stuff, and weird things would happen while they were watching us too. And she kind of gotten used to it because she had been around it for so long, which sounds really odd. Like, why would you keep coming? She was older. So when we moved out, she moved in with her boyfriend, if I remember correctly. My mom would probably know this story clearly of who exactly moved in there. I know they moved in, but it could have been her mom too moved in there, but I think it was just the boyfriend and the girlfriend that moved in. Anyway, we left the TV there because we felt the TV was where it was living, and we just said, we think that it's in there. And we told them if you want to keep it or if you want to get rid of it. So we left the TV there. We took everything else and we left the TV, which I think is why the people before us left the TV. anyway, what happened was the guy ended up being murdered in the house, and there's no rhyme or reason, and they've never figured out how he was killed and who did it. And you can actually look it up in the LA information, and it's listed in there. And it's so freaky because I feel like maybe it was this ghost, this spirit, saw him as a threat. That's why I don't understand if he thinks like the women are his wife, or if they think he's a threat to him, like he's burglarizing the house. I'm not sure what happened, but I kind of feel like it was the spirit because he was so angry and was always doing things. And it wasn't just us either. We had a neighbor that lived next door to us because it was a duplex, and they had things that were always going on in their house too. And they had a daughter and a son that were like teenagers at the time, and they were having things where he would be really angry and do stuff to them too, which they ended up moving before us. And then we left afterwards. But it was so scary, and it was so, most of the time when I hear ghost stories, they're upset, but they don't really, or they're more just confused on where they're at, and they don't really do harm. And thank goodness there wasn't like any true harm. But I promise you, like, I can still see my brother's arm just being slammed into the dresser, and him waking up where he has blood, like, actually on his arm from the ghost, the spirit, hitting his arm so hard. And it makes me wonder, like, why was he somewhat nice to me but not nice to my brother? I don't know. It's so creepy. And when I talk about it, and like I said, if you don't believe in afterlife and you don't believe in spirits, then you might be like, whatever. But absolutely believe in spirits. And we had another time where we weren't sure if it was a spirit in another house that my husband and I moved to, and there was kind of like weird things going on. And of course he's like, it's rats or whatever his excuse was. But if you ever have like a problem with a spirit and you happen to know, like in the house that we moved into, it was an older lady and her husband was in the house. And later on we found out that the husband died in the house. And I think in this, for instance, I think he wanted to know where his wife was, and he was looking for her. And so I actually had her address, and I said it out loud, and it might seem crazy to you, but if you happen to know, like, if there is some kind of background and if they went to a cemetery because they've died or passed away and it's an older home, say it out loud, because I swear to God, everything stopped at that moment. Once we gave him the information of where she went, where she moved to, all the weird things stopped happening. And my husband says, oh, the rat moved on, or whatever it was, obviously it coincides with us giving an address out. So I just want to tell you guys that too, that if you ever have an issue where there might be one and you happen to know any type of background to it, say it out loud. And I did do the whole where we did the scriptures and stuff like that. We had people come in and bless the house when we were in the duplex, and it didn't work. So I don't know. I don't know if it always doesn't work, or maybe we just didn't have the right preacher come in. I'm not quite sure, but anyway, I wanted to share it with you. It's my little scary story. It's freaky to me, and it still is something I talk about with certain people. But like I said, my husband thinks I sound like a lunatic when I talk about it. But I think he got a little taste of it when we lived in our old house, and he was like, okay, well, maybe it does. Maybe it exists. And when he said he felt like somebody was standing at the foot of our bed one time, and he said, I swore when I opened my eyes, he was like right there. I think that was his taste, where he was like, okay, well, maybe I kind of believe it, but still don't talk about it. So, but that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed. And until next time, stay safe.